my friend Jan Rader. Jan, it's nice to have you on the Hopecast podcast.
Thank you, Mitch. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
You know, I was here at the mission for 11 years and met a lot of great friends along the way who I never would have known otherwise. And certainly Jan is one of them. And I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to call you friend.
Well, I feel the same way about you. Through you know everyday work that I have done for many years, you have been um, a constant positive within the city of Huntington.
That's good to hear. I we certainly I don't know what the alternative is to that. It's too easy to be a stick in the mud, you know.
That is true.
Um, I can say that there are friends that are acquaintances, and there are friends that if you call them with a need, they might actually show up with the solution before they even call you back, and that's Jan, and so I just love her, and I'm so thankful to know her. Jan, why don't you tell us a bit about where you're from and kind of how you got into the work that you're doing now?
Okay, so I grew up across the river in Ironton, Ohio. I was born and raised there. I actually started working in the jewelry business. I'm a graduate gemologist, weirdly. Um, and I made custom jewelry for years. I ended up working at a shop in the DC area. And then one day my whole life changed when a lady had a heart attack in the doorway of that store, and I did not know CPR.
Yeah.
And she collapsed. I watched her collapse, and I called 911 and waited, and some people stopped, did CPR, and fire department showed up, and there was a woman firefighter, and this is in like 1993.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a choice for women. So within a couple of weeks, I took a CPR class, and then I enrolled in an EMT basic class, and I signed up to take a firefighter test in Fairfax County, Virginia. And my brother was a pastor here at Inslow Park Presbyterian Church. And he called me and he said, I heard you're interested in being a firefighter. They're giving the test in Huntington. We want you to come home and take the test here. So I did.
Great.
And so I hired on with Huntington in 94 and worked as a firefighter for 27 and a half years. And then I took a different role in the city where I work mainly on substance use disorder, severe mental illness, and specifically now homelessness. But, on top of being a firefighter, after I took that EMT basic class, I ended up taking a paramedic class when I moved back here. So I would run as a paramedic on my days off from the fire department. And then eventually I went to nursing school. And so I would work in a local emergency room.
Wow.
On my days off from the fire department. So I have a very unique, weird view of the front line that our first responders deal with on a regular basis. So
that's quite a stretch to go from a jewelry maker to a firefighter slash paramedic slash nurse.
It's kind of odd.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how if we all go back and try to connect the dots, it doesn't always make sense at the time.
But, not at all.
So tell us a little more about your current role and for the city.
So basically, I work with our partners, the city's partners throughout the city, and work on grants, writing grants to try to open our pathways for those in need on the front lines. We have an intersection that's increased over the years, substance use disorder, a lot of mental illness, and homelessness. We actually, we have a housing crisis. We kind of had a trifecta of things. We had the opioid epidemic that turned into worse than it was when it was just an opioid epidemic with meth and polysynthetic substances available on the streets. And then we had COVID,
Yeah.
a pandemic on top of that, and that exposed a lot of mental illness, from loneliness and lack of connection. And we have some crises within our healthcare system, and when that happens, things that are not urgent are the things that are neglected the most,
Right.
and that would be mental health. And on top of that, now we have a housing crisis that's been brewing for well over a decade. So there's not enough housing throughout the country. So they're colliding, and it's
Perfect
difficult.
storm.
Right, it's perfect storm, and then it's difficult for a lot of cities are struggling um, to deal with the extra burden. And so our administration is very aware of that, and is doing all they can. They're probably doing more than many cities. I wish all cities would take the responsibility
Right.
that our city is taking, but as any administration is responsible for all people within their city limits.
That's right.
The wealthy, the poor,
Mhm.
the people being stolen from, the people doing the stealing, so it's a balance. And
That's a tough gig when you think about it that
it,
way.
it can be.
Yeah.
It can be. So
And of course, I know that you've had probably through your both fire department and being a paramedic, um, quite a lengthy time working with folks with substance use disorder.
sure.
If you were to talk to the let's say the average person on the street who sees these folks and says, "Why don't they just stop?" What would you like to tell that person? What would you like to? How would you like to educate uh, John Q. Public about that?
It's kind of tough, it's very complex. Um, it's kind of it's very difficult now versus a decade ago, when you and I started dealing with the
Yeah.
opioid epidemic. I
Right.
remember you and I having many conversations about this. It seems like, we had this epidemic start from overprescribing of pills that were very potent and very addictive by
Right.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first couple of generations of addiction that spawned from the opioid epidemic were people that had basically had normal lives. They got injured, they got legally hooked. They were easier to assist in getting through that addiction, even though it is hard to just stop.
Right.
There's
That's
a lot of physical and psychological things that need to be dealt with. But now we're on generation 4, 5. And so,
Right.
we're dealing with people who grew up without any normalcy. They
Yeah.
don't know how to cook, clean, balance a checkbook. Um, they have a lot of trauma, and that trauma, all they know is addiction and drugs.
Right.
And so that's a whole different ball of wax when you get somebody clean that doesn't, you have to rebuild their lives
Right.
from basic life skills.
You talk about normalcy. It seems to me that that while we would certainly not view their lives as normal, I think that's what they've come to see is
Sure.
that is normal to them, and if they're doing well and clean for a while, that seems abnormal to,
Yes.
to them.
So it's a whole different concept to them, and so
Mhm.
it's a little more difficult than it was even 5 years ago
Yeah.
to assist those in need.
Mhm.
So I would, when I encounter people and they're like, just do this or do that, they need to, if they're willing, I'm certainly open to conversations, but I think that we as a society need to try to stop judging people and try to be open minded and
Mhm.
ask questions. And, I think when you're curious and
Mhm.
you ask a lot of questions, you end up in a better place with a better understanding.
Yeah.
And, you know, even as a young nurse, when I started working in the emergency room, you know, I saw people who wanted people just shoot out of the emergency room. They didn't want to deal with an overdose. They didn't want to,
Mhm.
and, you know, I wasn't taught in nursing school anything about addiction and how to deal with it, but my perspective changed when I started asking my patients. So I'm, you know, in a very curious way, non-judgmental way, help me understand how you got to where you are,
Right.
and
Right.
what can we do that makes it better, and what do we do that makes it worse, you know. And it gave me a very deep perspective of how people get to where they are.
Strictly from the substance use disorder, are you optimistic? Do you feel like we're improving or going down the right path, or what do you think the future for that looks like?
I think that every action you get a reaction,
Yeah.
and so you got to be careful about what you do, and we've learned that here in Huntington. But I think that in ways it's getting better, but there's other complicating factors that were unforeseen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just life in general.
Sure.
I think we'll get through this. I'm optimistic that things are getting better in some ways. But, you know, money's getting tighter.
Yeah.
Throughout, you know, for um, providing assistance.
Mm-hmm. So, and you said it earlier, but the homelessness and um, folks in addiction, it's such a, it's they're like twin sisters. They go together. I used to when I first came to the mission would hear people talk about the homeless and then the drug addicts, and what I learned pretty quickly was that's the same people. You know.
Well, I think that when life is tough and you experience trauma, you want to numb that. And drugs offer that numbness. Some people do it with alcohol. I mean, I know people that have really highly intelligent, great paying jobs, but every weekend they're drunk, you
Right.
know, so they're numbing with alcohol. It's a drug, and people
It's a
fail to, you know, recognize that.
it is a something that I heard early on, and I've come to believe more and more that addiction is itself is actually just a symptom of something else.
It's a symptom of a deeper problem.
Right.
So,
Whether it's a physical, emotional, spiritual,
mhm.
whatever it is. So
And the opposite of addiction is community.
yeah.
And so I think we see that, and that was kind of highlighted with COVID. A lot of people who were in a community recovering and doing well, when they couldn't go around other people, they relapsed.
Yeah. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you what, we certainly picked a good time to be in this kind of work, didn't we? Thinking back over these last 11 years.
No, I mean, is it tough? Sure. But is it rewarding? Sure.
Sure, absolutely.
I think you and I can sleep well at night.
Yeah. It's if you're not, you should be.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the thing that I don't want to sound like something I'm not. I'm certainly have my deep faults, but the thing that might keep me awake is the ones that fell through the cracks, and you know, you, you come to,
and you know, the one thing I've really learned is, you know, a lot of times I think society gives up on people.
yeah,
I don't give up on people, you know, but they're going to suffer the consequences of their actions.
that's right.
Okay.
Right.
I think that the goal should be to open those pathways so people can make a choice to change the trajectory of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
If they choose that, then they have a lot of hard work ahead of them.
Right.
Some people choose not to do the hard work and move forward, and you know, that's why this is America. You do have a choice.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of Jans and Mitches, not only in Huntington but in this world. But I think that the workers also have to have boundaries and understand that
that's true. it'll eat you alive if
Yes.
you
Yes.
don't. So, like with folks in addiction, is there something particularly about people experiencing homelessness that you would like to educate John Q. Public with?
Well, again, it's a symptom typically of something deeper. It might be, we're seeing more and more people being evicted because of the housing crisis.
Right.
And the only thing they're guilty of is being poor, and they're not suffering from substance use disorder or severe mental illness. But the longer they stay homeless, they are sitting prey for falling into that crack.
That's right.
So, I think that people need to understand that homelessness is a very complex issue, that we as a country are 3 to 5 million housing units short.
Wow.
And it wouldn't be so visible if we had proper housing. But here we are. There's a really good book called Homelessness is a Housing Problem. It's a good short read. I can't remember the author's name. There's two men that wrote it. It's a very quick read, but it's a very good book, and it gives a good understanding of how we ended up in the situation we are as a country in the housing crisis.
So, Jan, what I found when I came to the mission was that there are a lot of what I call disposable people that seem like they just get tossed aside like a used Kleenex. And, every one of them has a name and a story. And I was just wondering if there was any particular story that you would like to share with about some of this community.
So yes, I've really met some very unique people along the way, and people that were struggling and now are thriving and helping others themselves. I can think of many, but some really stick with you. I'll mention one in particular. I'm going to call him Bob, even though that's not his name. This is a gentleman that I had multiple times as a firefighter, responding to his overdoses and his injuries. I probably had him, I don't know, probably 5 to 10 times. One time, and he was very belligerent. He would really curse me, and he was very colorful. But for some reason, it didn't offend me, and I just felt like he was, full of himself, and I felt like, that he's hiding something. Okay, so push comes to shove, I start learning more about his background. Circumstances allowed that, and when I learned his background and how at age 8 he got drunk and high the first time because his mom wanted him shut up and didn't want to have to deal with him. And being drunk and high at 8 years old became his norm. I began to understand his behavior. He went to Recovery Point here in Huntington. He got clean. He did extremely well. Super intelligent, but never had the means to even finish high school, let alone go to college. Ended up having a bunch of kids that he had to provide for. Tried to keep a family together. It's difficult. Fell back into it. Ended up on the streets of Huntington again.
Wow.
But again, dealing with this serious childhood trauma. And got clean a second time. Went through Recovery Point a second time. Now he's working in recovery. He is thriving. And, I don't know if my life would have been productive had I experienced the same childhood trauma he did.
Right.
And, I often wonder what makes some people resilient and others not. But I don't feel like it is my job to decide who lives, who dies, who gets help, who doesn't. I think it's my job to create pathways and try to assist in any way I can. It is their responsibility to take advantage of that or not.
I had an old boss who used to say his job was to create opportunities for people like myself.
There you go.
And it was our job then to step up and
I
take
think I know that man, or I knew that man.
I think you probably did. Yeah. One of the greats.
Yes.
So what would you currently, the today's Jan Rader, like to say to the Jan Rader that was making jewelry and watching that person have a heart attack in the store? What would you like to say to her?
Mm. Be more open-minded and quit judging people.
That seems to be a more and more of a common theme, doesn't it?
I mean, it's we all judge. I judge.
Yeah, we do.
I try to stop myself, but that's a survival mechanism.
It is.
It's a human condition, but
Right.
it's one of the things that builds stigma.
Yeah.
For yourself,
Yeah.
creating your own barriers, and
That's
and for others.
Yeah. How do you feel about the future? Let's just use the typical the next 5 years. Are you optimistic or concerned or pessimistic as far as addiction and homeless services in Huntington goes? What is your take on it?
I'm very optimistic because I will say in Appalachia, we have something that other communities don't have, and that's we work well together and we lean on each other, and we have a lot of like minded people who might not agree on a path forward, but we do agree that it's best to help somebody versus just throwing them away.
Yeah.
And I think that there's more good than evil, not only in this area, but in this world. And I think that there's enough people working that can pivot and work with. I'm not a political person whatsoever. I'm pragmatic, and you give me the boundaries, and I can work within them. I try to look at things from a 50-foot view, trying to see the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I also try to make sure that anything new that we try is not going to create problems down the road. We've learned through that. So I'm optimistic. I think that eventually, you can't build housing overnight.
That's right.
But you can start, and you can create the pathways for people who do that to build, and eventually we'll get there.
Right.
Not just Huntington, but West Virginia and the country.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, my friend, for talking with me. Is there anything else we should cover that we haven't?
No, I think we covered a lot.
We've not got it all figured out, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you, my friend. I love you, and
Love
thank
you.
you
Appreciate
for
you.
coming and doing this today. And even though I'm not directly working, directly with the homeless population anymore, it's still a huge part of my heart, and I'm sure that we'll have opportunities. I hope anyway to cross paths again.
I think we will.
Yeah.
I every day I sit at my desk and I view a picture that you framed for me and gave to me as a present. And it's the sunrise down the alley behind the city mission.
Right. That's right.
And it reminds me that it is our responsibility to take care of the least of us.
Yeah.
And that every day is a brand new day.
That's right. We call that hope element.
I have a wonderful picture of it.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.